What do you think about a person who just walks around and looks at the sky, looks around him at the sunset, walks on the beach, on the field, and does nothing, and spends hours doing that? What do you think about that person? Forget about the Bible text. Obviously, you have to say something nice now. But no. Be honest. If you see somebody doing that every day, early in the morning, I have a friend, every day he says, and he showed me on his phone, he walks 20 kilometers every day. I asked him, well, what do you do when you walk around for so many hours? Because that's hours of walk. He walks up at 4 or 5 in the morning and till 6, 7, he's keep walking, and then again a few hours in the evening. So that's a few hours of walk every day. He is very healthy. He lost a little bit of weight. And I asked him, what do you do? He says, well, sometimes I just walk and think about life, God, stuff. But sometimes I just put my headphones and listen to music or listen to some podcasts, things like this. I said to him, do you ever just walk and try not listening to anything, just try to connect with something higher than you? And he says, I don't know how to do that. You see, we live in a world where it's a bit strange not to do anything or just listen and stay in silence, or even focus on something for a long period of time. That's very unusual. That's why we have very few people today who are good thinkers. Because people today don't like to take time to think. In order to think, you need time. And when you do something, when you're busy with things, you cannot think too much. The verse I just told you about in the Bible, in Genesis chapter 24, with Isaac outside on the field, evening time, when nobody was working on the field anymore because it was too late, and he was out there just doing what? Because the word we have translated here with, what was the word? Went out to meditate. We're not sure if that's correct, because this word is unique. And most of the translators will be honest and say, this is our choice of translation, but we don't know for sure what is the right translation, because that word only appears once. So they choose to translate it with Isaac went out on the field to meditate, because what else can you do? But what we know is what happened after Isaac went out on the field to meditate. So let's put this verse a little bit in the context. Do you remember when did this happen? In what moment of his life? What happened in his life when he, that evening, decided to went out in the field?
Well, we know he had fled home and he was living with his uncle.
No, that's Isaac, not Jacob.
Where we... yes.
This is not Jacob. No. He was waiting for a wife. Now, you see, that is a very important thing that you have to do before you even meet your wife. Do you know that all of us are married before we officially get married? If you don't understand what I'm saying, you shouldn't even think about getting married. Seriously. I have a friend, when we were teenagers, we were talking about how should we treat girls. And when you're young, there's some kind of atoms in your body, they're moving a bit faster. And your mind gets a little bit cloudy. And you want to act. And you start just grabbing her hand and kissing her and then doing a bit more other stuff. And this man said to me, he was young, he says, I don't want to kiss any girl before I know that she's going to be my wife. And some friends of ours saying, oh, you are so naive, you're so, how do you want to do that? I mean, come on, what world do you live in? What is this? Not many girls will accept that, and that's true. Not too many girls will accept that. They will make fun of you. And he says, listen, I started to prepare myself for my future wife. So do you know who is she? I say, no. Whoever she is, I have to prepare myself. Because when she's going to meet me, when I'm going to meet her, and when we will become husband and wife, she needs to have a husband. And you don't become a husband when you said yes in front of the priest. You prepare to become a husband. You prepare to become a doctor. You prepare to become a pastor. You prepare to be an engineer. You do years of study for almost everything else in life. Do you know you have to study and be ready to become a husband or to become a wife? Has anyone told you that? Well, I'll tell you now. You need preparation for that. Too many people, they just jump in life, not even having the slightest clue what it means to be a husband or a wife. And then we are surprised that at least 60% of the couples today, they get divorced in the first 5 years. 5 years. And once they remarry, the rate goes higher. And then they have the third marriage and the rate of divorce goes even higher than that. Because you're not prepared for that. But how do you prepare for that? Isaac was in the field in the evening when probably other people were watching a movie, listening to music, maybe having fun with their friends, watching a football game. I don't know, doing something because he was tired after a day of work. And they just wanted to relax. But he was outside in the field thinking about maybe his future wife, but also thinking about himself. What should he do to be ready so that when his wife comes to him, he is a good husband? Something very interesting happens. He's out in the field. The Bible says here, he lifted up his eyes at some point, and he saw, and behold, there were camels coming. And Rebekah lifted up her eyes too. You see, it happens almost simultaneously. Because they were both preparing for that. We go through the Bible and we read about Abraham and Jacob and David and Moses because their lives are so impressive. Isaac, what do we know about Isaac? There are quite a few chapters on Abraham in the Bible, maybe a bit more on Jacob, a few more on Moses, quite a few on David and Solomon and others. But how about Isaac? What do you know about Isaac? What does the Bible say about Isaac? That's what we know for sure. You see, the history kind of repeats with his family. But we don't know too much about him. But what we know from the beginning of his life, from his experience, is more than enough to learn from him. Both of them, Isaac and Rebekah, they were somehow living in an expectation. He went out on the field not just to be out on the field. He was trying to be ready to meet her, to see her. And he was. And she was ready as well. When she saw Isaac, she dismounted from the camel and said to the servant, "Who is this man walking in the field to meet us?" Do you see what she says? She's not asking just, "Who is this man?" She's asking, "Who is this man walking in the field?" So she recognizes the importance of what he does in the field. So what was he doing there? As I said, some people think that he was praying. Other people think he was meditating. He was contemplating something. But what we know is the result of that is an amazing life, an amazing marriage. They look at each other when they see themselves, and they decide they will have a special family. And they did. And they did. And let me tell you, when somebody follows that advice and they do what Isaac did, life gets something very special. Many years later, there's another guy, a man of action. He was born a Jew, but he grew up as an Egyptian. We're not going to go through all the circumstances because it's not important now. And at some point in time, he goes out in the field, he walks around, and he's witnessing a fight. And he decides to do something about it. He's a man of action. You know who I'm talking about? Moses. You recognize him. He sees what happened and he says, "I cannot just sit and wait and watch and do nothing. I have to do something. I have to make things right." That's a good intention, isn't it? He sees injustice and he decides that something must be done. Things might and can and have to be put right. Good intention. And what is he doing? How does he put things right? By doing something wrong. Have you ever tried to do something, to obtain something, to achieve something good, but in a bad way? So many people think that as long as you get a good result, it doesn't matter how you got it. It's something good. He saved those people. The means. I think it's everywhere in the world. You see, he had a very good intention. He was well motivated. The Spirit of God was working in him, trying to prepare him for his future. But not in the way he thought. But he was a man of action. He didn't like to stay and think too much. He didn't learn how to do that from the Egyptians, because the Egyptians were man's people of action. If you go to Egypt today, you will see the results of their bright mind and of their good actions. The pyramids and everything that's there is unique in the world. And it's been like that for thousands of years. So Moses have to learn something else. The next day, he goes out again. And now he meets again his brothers. And they say to him, "Do you want to do to us what you did to the Egyptian yesterday?" There's a lesson there. If you are capable to do something bad and wrong because you are well motivated, then don't worry, you will be able to do tomorrow something wrong with the wrong motivation. Because when you're capable to do evil, you are capable to do evil, period. And then he's afraid. He says, well, if they know, everybody can know, and shortly the whole country will find out about it, and I don't want to lose my life. And he runs away. And for how many years was he out and about? 40 years. Where? In the big metropolis, New York. No, he's out in the wilderness. I'm reading from the book of Exodus now, chapter 3. Now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. And Moses says, I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. Now this is something very interesting for Moses. He's not the kind of guy who sits and just watches. No. He's a man of action, or he was. Now he has learned something very interesting. How did he know that the bush is not consumed by fire? How did he know that that fire is continually burning and doesn't stop? You cannot know that if you're just passing. You don't know that if you watch that fire for about a minute or 2 or 5. Have you ever been out in the forest or somewhere and you decided with your friends to have a nice fire and play the guitar maybe and sing some songs and try to impress the girls? I'm sure we've all done that. For how long does the fire burn? If you put quite a few, it takes a while, a couple of hours, depending how big the fire is. So you don't know if the fire will end or not unless you spend more time. So how did Moses know that the bush was not consumed by the fire?
Must have been watching it for quite a while.
He must have been doing something that it was unusual for him when he was younger. Because in the wilderness, you see a bush there, the next 5 minutes can be in the fire. And you see another bush there, it's on the fire. How do you know this is special? Because they all burn the same. But he spent unusual time to be able to notice something unusual around him. Now, when you read the Bible, do you have the feeling that you discover something unusual, something special, something that will influence your life and it can give your life a different turn? Do you study the Bible this way? Or you read the Bible, go through it, and you feel, oh, interesting. I have a few more information now. I got a bit more knowledge. I might know a bit more than my brothers when we have Sabbath school, and that's it. Why do people study the Bible just as a usual book, and they are just usual people, ordinary people, an ordinary book, and an ordinary life? When God's people, they study the Bible, they meet the Creator in a special way, and then their life from ordinary turns to be extraordinary. There was Isaac. He was not an ordinary man. There is Moses. He became an extraordinary man because he did something that ordinary people don't like to do. You see, we have the phones today. Can you tell me something? And be honest with me. When you open your phone, how long do you stick with the same app? How long do you use the same app? For how long? I'm sure you can count it. Or maybe it's so fast that you jump from one app to the other, then you cannot even count. So this way we teach ourselves not to be able to focus on something, to contemplate something. Many years ago, hundreds of years ago, Ellen White was saying that we should try to meditate and contemplate Jesus' life at least for 1 hour per day. Have you ever tried that? We want to be like him, but we don't know how he is. We want to have his patience, but we don't know he was patient. Because if we don't spend time to see how patient he was, how can we be like him? We want to be kind like him and answer to people with his kindness, but we don't know how that is because we don't spend time learning about his kindness. When he was on the cross and people were mocking him, he was in pain, and not only physical pain, but spiritual pain. And most of the people don't even know it's possible. And they were all there spitting on him, mocking him, throwing things on him. I don't even want to portraitize how the scene was in reality. There are some embarrassing aspects of what happened when Jesus was on the cross that we don't even want to think about. It wasn't easy. And he finds the strength to say, Father, forgive them, because they don't know what they're doing. How can we be like him if we don't contemplate his life? If we don't spend time with him? We can never be like him. Have you ever met a person, let's say a man or a woman who got married, and then when they got married, he was a good person, and then after years, you meet that person and you realize, and people say about, no, this is not a nice guy, this is not a nice woman. I don't know why you think that he is kind and patient and a good person, because no, I don't know them this way. Have you ever witnessed something like that? They were good and nice people before, and after some years of marriage, they became really bad people. Why? If you spend time with the person, you will be like that person very soon. If you want to be like Jesus, the only way you can be like him is to spend time with him. That's the only way. And look what happens with Moses. 40 years in the wilderness, he became a different person, patient enough, wise enough to know that action is not always the best action, and that before you do something, you sit down and you ask your master, what do I have to do here? You don't just jump in doing something. And he waits, and he waits, and he waits long enough to see that that bush there, though it looks like every other bush in the wilderness, that's special. That's something there that makes that bush extraordinary. And he says, something is not normal here. And then at some point, the Bible says, when the Lord, and listen to these words, when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, then he called to him. out of the bush. So many people read, they look at the bush, they're passing through, and if you ask them, they're saying, I've been reading the Bible for all my life. I don't hear anything special from God. I pray for hours, and it seems my prayers, they just stick and hit the ceiling, and that's where they stay. I pray for this situation for years, and nothing happened. God is deaf to my requests. Do you know why God, and when God turned and answered to Moses and spoke to Moses? The Bible says, I just read it, when he saw that Moses is ready to listen. When he noticed that Moses turned around, then he knew this is the right time. Now he is ready. If I speak to Moses when he kills the Egyptian, he's not ready for that. If I speak to Moses when he goes in the wilderness in the beginning, he's not ready for this experience. But after 40 years of silence and meditation and contemplation, Moses became a different person. So he was ready for God to reveal to him. If we complain about something, that's not because it's his fault. It's maybe because we are not ready for that. And he wants us to be ready. And even though Moses was ready for this revelation, he was still in need to learn. Listen. Moses, Moses, God said. And Moses says, here I am. Then he said, do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. So he makes Moses aware that for the type of revelation he wants to offer, he needs to realize that he is in a special place. People don't get to know God just because they say, God, if you exist, I want to know about you. Pilate goes and meets Jesus and he says, what is the truth? Like, what is the truth? Yeah. Like every day you'll hear what the truth is. And you stay face to face with the truth and you ask that question like you can do whatever you want with the truth. And then, of course, you're not going to get an answer. The answer is right in front of your eyes. And you ignore it and you despise it. And you think you're going to get more? No way. You're not capable to handle more. So you're not going to hear anything else. So Moses is told, be aware where you are. If you want more, you'll get more, but careful. And God said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac. Remember Isaac? And the God of Jacob. And Moses did what when he heard these words? He hid his face. For he was afraid to look at God. When I was a child and was doing something wrong, and my mother was asking me to come and deal with me, sometimes when I was afraid, I was just going there and
Covering your face.
cover my face, thinking that maybe if I don't see her, she won't see me. I know it's childish, but Moses is afraid and he's covering his face. Why? You're not dying because you see God. You're dying because he sees you, if that's the problem. And if he wants you to see him, and he stays in front of you, then you better don't cover your face. You look as close as you can, because you don't know when you're going to have another chance for that. But that's what he did as a reaction. And now listen to this. Then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings. I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, and Perizzites, and Hivites, and Jebusites. And now, behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression which the Egyptians oppressed them. Come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. What is the word that repeats here more than any other word? Say it. You're right. I am the God of your father. I am the God of Abraham. I'm the God of Isaac. I'm the God of Jacob. I have surely seen the affliction. I know their sufferings. I have come down. I have also seen the oppression. And now I will send you. And Moses responds. What is his response? What is his response? It's in the Bible.
Who am I?
Who am I?
Yeah, why me?
But Moses, I just told you this is not about you. I have seen. I am the God. I know. I have decided. And I will send you. So it's not about you. Why do you ask me, who am I? Why this question? I just told you you have to focus on something else. And you again look in the wrong direction. I mean, in a way, I understand Moses. I mean, come on. Everything that happened to him was because of his decision in Egypt and what he did with the Egyptians. He wanted to free his countrymen. He was ready for that, he thought. And now when he completely lost his confidence, and you see this, who am I? You know? Before, I am the one who can do this, but now who am I? After 40 years in wilderness, of course you ask yourself, who am I? But you just heard something that you've never heard before, that I send you. And you still ask yourself who you are. Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? You don't have to ask that question. But if you asked it, I'll tell you. Again, I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you, that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Israel, you shall serve God on this mountain. Then Moses says to God, if I come to the people of Israel, again, you have to, God has enough patience to explain Moses. If I come to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? He just told him, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But anyway, who should I tell them? And God said to Moses, I am who I am. And if you know that this is God, then you and me should never, ever use the word I. Because the only I that is really matter in life is the big and great I am. We are not. We cannot say I am. We can say I received, I was blessed, I was sent, I am serving, but we cannot say I am. We should never ask, who am I? Because the only one who can answer I am is the one who created us. And as soon as we learn this lesson, our life will change in a miraculous way. What is the connection between the burning bush and the great I am? If you turn up a fire, what do you have to do to be able to keep having that fire on? What do you have to do?
Keep giving it wood.
Put wood on it.
Yeah.
Sustain the fire.
Feed it.
Feed it.
Yeah.
There's no fire who will not consume. But this bush was burning and never consumed. Why? Because that's an image of the great I am, who doesn't need anyone and anything to be. And that's an image of us in the face of the great I am, and we all, always need Him in order to be. I don't want to be very philosophical, but everything starts from here. So I'm going back to Isaac before I finish. Isaac was on the field, looking at the sky. He turned up his eyes, just like Rebecca. And before they got married, they admitted that that's the great I am, and there's somebody who can be great because they recognize the great I am. Do you feel your life is too ordinary? Do you feel you want something special in your life? Do you feel that things are not as you wanted them to be? There's only one thing you have to do. Go out in the wilderness. Go out in the field. And get to know the great I am. And when you do that, all your questions will get the right answer. And I pray that we will be enough motivated that when we go home, we will take some special time in the presence of the great I am and listen to Him. He will maybe tell you where He wants to send you. And then you can say, here I am. Thank you, Lord. May God bless us. Amen.